Who Knows Nada. My name is Brianna. This is the Mama Knows Nada podcast, and staying on theme for this year with our Stay True, we're going to discuss with Lauren, a Fit Mama Tribe, about how we can stay true with our fitness goals this year. So welcome, Lauren. Her studio is based in St. Augustine, here in Florida, where I am based. And we're going to pick her brain all about fitness, wellness, and how that applies pre-baby, pregnancy, postpartum. So again, thanks so much for being here. I'm so happy to have you and feature Fit Mama Tribe. Welcome to the podcast. Oh, of course. I want to first go with a very basic question. And I think sometimes when it comes to fitness and goals and everything, like, it's easy to say like, oh, men are, quote unquote stronger, or women are too muscular, or whatever. And I kind of want to get into the difference of male versus female and how those bodies may or may not be different to train. Can you speak to that?
Sure. So women generally have less lean body mass than men of the same weight. And because of that, we are more susceptible to deconditioning. Women also typically, I'd say the majority of women that I've worked with, they are exercising for weight loss and to tone up. Yeah. But in general, the basic principles should stay the same. So, training using your body weight before any external resistance, training the whole core system, using multiple joint exercises, etc.
Oh, I like that. I didn't even think about we're training for different things.
Yeah.
Is there anything a woman has to consider that a man doesn't when training?
We have less testosterone naturally. And like I said, we have less lean body mass. So we have more essential fat mass, which is essential for carrying children and things like that. So because of that, again, we are going to be more susceptible to deconditioning. So if we don't exercise for 2 months, we will decondition faster than a male of the same exact weight.
Can you just define for me deconditioning to make sure I'm understanding you correctly?
So, basically kind of losing some muscle mass, not being able to perform the same as you were when you were being consistent in the gym.
Okay, so that's really interesting. So if I'm not working out for if I take a break or have an injury,
yeah,
my body will essentially lose muscle mass and not be as strong 2 months later than my male counterpart at the same size.
Yeah.
Correct. Essentially.
Yeah. And
I never knew that.
We always kind of joke about it, especially with my female clients, which now I only train females. I used to train both males and females, but there was even that commercial a few years ago. It's like I stopped drinking diet soda and I lost no weight. My husband stopped drinking diet soda and he lost 20 pounds. And so it's just males just, they have more muscle mass, and because of that, they're going to stay a little bit leaner than we are just under natural circumstances. So
that's biology for you right there.
It is.
Are there any misconceptions about training regularly that you'd like to address?
So two come to mind. I would say the biggest misconception that I hear, and it comes up with pretty much every consultation that I do with women, and it's that women don't want to lift heavy weights because they don't want to, quote, bulk up. So, the other one is slimming down with cardio. So you'll hear a lot of women say they're just going to go do an hour of cardio 5 days a week, and that's how they're going to slim down. In reality, muscle is going to burn more than fat. So, I always say if you only have 30 minutes to work out, do a strength training session versus a 30-minute cardio session, because the muscle that you build is going to burn fat throughout your day, whereas cardio is going to burn those calories during that time frame, and then it kind of stops a little bit faster than if you were to be building that lean muscle.
I like that. And just for clarification purposes, is something like body weight squats or and push-ups, is that what you're talking about for
Definitely.
that 30 minutes?
Yeah.
And then for a high intensity thing, you might throw in burpees or something.
Yeah,
but that's
for sure.
That's more cardio.
Yeah. So I'm
right,
talking, when I say
okay.
cardio, I mean like hopping on the elliptical for 30 minutes or
Dang it.
which we want you to move your body. So however you're able to move your body for those 30 minutes is going to be better than sitting on the couch for those 30 minutes. So I try not to overthink it, but
That's dope. I've become very dependent on the elliptical because like I play tennis, and so I find that playing tennis 3 or 4 days a week, like everything's sore. So instead of running, like I'll hop on the elliptical, but maybe I need to do something else.
You can change it up on the elliptical too. You can add resistance, and sometimes I'll hold like the stationary handles and I'll kind of squat down and like sit back into it, so you really get a little bit of a lower body burn with the cardiovascular element too. So there's ways to change things up and keep it interesting, if you will.
Well, I am too basic for the elliptical. Let's just put it that way. All right. So now that we've talked a little bit about the differences between male and female, let's move into the female pregnant body. I know, let's just preface this by saying every pregnancy and every pregnant body is different, and every pregnant experience is different. So we might go for generalities here for anybody who's listening, just to kind of put that out there to begin with. But what does a pregnant woman need to consider when exercising?
I think first and foremost, it's important to remember that your body is changing and it's supposed to change. I was thinking about like whether we should bring in like the social media component of this, which we might talk about a little bit later. But I think it's important to consider that, pregnancy is not the time to start making gains or shooting for personal records. We want to make sure that we're honoring our bodies where they are day to day, because it's going to change day to day. You might feel kind of like run down and sluggish today, and tomorrow you might wake up feeling like $1 million, like you could conquer the world. But we want to start making small changes and adjustments now, so that we can help with things like diastasis recti, your recovery, any kind of incontinence that you might potentially deal with, both during pregnancy as well as in the postpartum phase. So, just remembering to give yourself some grace throughout the pregnancy. Try not to compare yourself to others, because like you said, like every pregnancy is different from person to person and from pregnancy to pregnancy within the same person. So some other things to consider would be, you might be short of breath or lightheaded. There's a much higher blood volume and a higher resting heart rate. And then we also have that hormone called relaxin that is produced during pregnancy, which is going to increase the ligamentous laxity, especially in your pelvic joints. So you might start experiencing things like pubic symphysis pain or sacroiliac pain, which we can address if those things happen. And then I think the other thing to consider is a little bit of the fear mongering that's been going on, which I see on social media. My oldest is 8.5. So when I was pregnant, there was little to no information readily available for me, training myself throughout my pregnancy. I looked back at my my personal training textbook, and I was like, okay, I'm just going to like brush up. Actually, I did this when I was training my first pregnant client about 11 years ago. And I was like, oh, right. I remember now that the section on pregnant women and working out was, it was no more than 2 paragraphs, and it was in a section called special populations. Wow. So it was grouped in with training the elderly. I mean, like all the special populations that you can think about. So we kind of went from this huge pendulum shift, right? So we had basically no information available to now it's readily available at our fingertips, whether you Google it or whether you're on Instagram. And, we want to make sure that you're getting your information from a valid source, not from somebody who has trained themselves during pregnancy but has no other training, or because someone has a ton of followers and, things like that. And, like, just because you're pregnant, I think that, like, I'll get messages in my inbox sometimes, like, I just found out I'm pregnant yesterday. What do I need to change now? So, just because you're pregnant, it doesn't mean that you're now limited to the workouts that your grandma is doing.
Yeah.
But it is really imperative to know your limits and to know when to pull back, when to modify, when you can maybe pick it up a notch. And, just to know that there are tons of safe ways to do the workouts that you're used to doing, so that you can continue to feel like yourself and not feel like you have a handicap of sorts because you're pregnant.
No, I like that you said that. And that was like my next thing is like, when are modifications? Well, first, before I get to that, I want to go back and just say, I think it's interesting in the last 10 years, the last decade, how that shift, I mean, in my lifetime, from my mid 20s to my now mid 30s, like the focus that there is on having healthy pregnant fitness.
For sure.
And we're going to get into like pros and cons of that in a minute. But so I think that's an interesting thing in just 10 years to have that huge sway. And either we're more conscientious of it, or women have just demanded, like, I'm not going to just sit here and grow a baby. I still want to be active and do it correctly and healthy and in a safe manner. So that's really interesting. But in terms of modifications, I guess, why are they important, and when, in your experience, have you recommended them to clients? Like, maybe like one day I can do a burpee and then all of a sudden, like, now I can't. Like, what does that modification look like, and why would you recommend it, is my overarching question.
So we want to modify exercise. It's not just during pregnancy. So think about if you have an injury, you would modify to protect yourself to not continue to injure yourself more. So we want to make sure that we're not overstressing the body. There's tons of postural changes that are happening during pregnancy. And those can lead to breathing differently. It can lead to some increased abdominal pressure that results in what looks like kind of like that dome down the center of the midline of the abdominal wall. So I don't know if you've ever seen that before, but kind of like if you go to do like a sit up and you see like this like dome kind of happening down the midline of your abdominal wall. Okay.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. So we don't want to add extra stress to an already stressed system. Sometimes, like, for instance, you use the burpee example. So if we wanted to start modifying the burpee, so let's say you're coming down and putting your hands down, and obviously, if you're doing burpees and coming all the way to your belly to the floor, we want to stop doing that once you feel like you can't lay on your stomach anymore. But let's say you're doing more of like a strict style burpee where you're putting your hands down, jumping your feet back, and you feel like you get into that plank position and you can't support that abdominal wall anymore. So maybe like your hips start like collapsing down. So we would want to start maybe elevating your hands up, so that instead of being in a full plank position like this, you could elevate your hands onto like a box or a bench or something like that. And so, we always just want to pay attention to how did that feel? Like I said, like, there's not going to be a set week of your pregnancy that we say, stop doing burpees, stop running, stop this, stop that. Right. So we always take it as an individual approach. And how did that feel for you today? And do we need to start modifying that exercise just so that you can feel really strong, supported, and connected through your entire core system?
No, I think that's so cool. Awesome. And part of the reason I reached out to you in particular, just so anybody who's listening knows, is that you do specialize, like you're Fit Mama Tribe. Like you specialize in women's fitness, prenatal, pregnancy, postpartum, all of those things. And I think it's really important to have somebody who's in it every day speak to what is, it's always a sliding scale like that. I think that's just like the essence of life, but I think it's really important to have somebody who sees different women at different stages of pregnancy, postpartum, pre-baby, kind of, discuss what is and isn't acceptable, because you're in it every day. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not in it every day. I had my kid, I'm done. So now, in your experience and your expertise, do you think that exercise during pregnancy, can that help have in like birth and in postpartum recovery?
Yeah. So, you're seeing some programs out there of like, do this program and guaranteed to not get diastasis recti, or guaranteed to have a a better birth and recovery. And what I will say to that is that there are no guarantees for anything. So what we do know is that exercise supports health and it supports a healthy pregnancy. But like I said, it's not going to guarantee how your labor and delivery and recovery will go. Sometimes things happen. So, a baby can stay breech and you might need to have a belly birth, or you might need to be induced due to blood pressure. And, I can speak to my own pregnancy with my first one. I was extremely healthy. I didn't gain a lot of weight. I was working out regularly, and around like 35 weeks or so, my blood pressure started spiking for no apparent reason. Oh. I even asked my doctor, I was like, what did I do wrong? And he's like, you've done nothing wrong. You've done everything exactly perfect. But sometimes your body just reacts this way. And I ended up being induced at 39 weeks. It was not preeclampsia, but they wanted to just make sure that the baby and I stayed healthy. So induction was not in my plan. And that was not, what I was expecting after staying so healthy throughout my pregnancy. But like I said, things happen. But we want to make sure that you do stay active, just for the health benefits of it. But we want to make sure that you're staying active, safely and with the correct support system. It's exercise for your physical and mental health, no matter what stage of life you're in, is very important. So.
Amen to that. I couldn't agree with that more. My husband knows, if I don't work out, just stay away from me. It's people meditate, and maybe this is just my undiagnosed ADD or ADHD, but I find that having that outlet, whether it's aggression, frustration, helps me focus, but I think just moving your body, even if it's just walking the dog or yoga or something and me personally, I did yoga all throughout pregnancy to help with breathing and finding that space, to deliver my son is essentially what I did it for. And I think sometimes we don't focus on staying fit for health benefits. We focus on exercise and fitness for being, thin or built or ripped, or this in a physique qualification, when really it's just about keeping our bodies healthy, keeping our mind healthy, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
Just, that's just me on my soapbox. That's what I do.
It sounds like my husband. He'll be like, do you need to work out or something? Cause he's getting a little wound up.
Yeah. You need to go take a break. Time out to the gym, right?
Exactly.
He knows. He's like, okay, it's been a day. You didn't work out yesterday. Okay, please go for a run. Go away from me. Thanks, babe. Well, at least he knows me well enough. So we talk about birth and recovery. I was speaking about this with a pelvic floor therapist, and about how there's that 6-week recovery time. Right. OBGYNs give you that 6-week recovery time, right? Which is okay, what does that really mean? Who knows? But when it comes to working out, you're being cleared to be physical and, re-engage with an exercise program post-baby. I'm going to put this in quotation marks, but what is a realistic timeline for getting back to a healthy pre-baby weight?
Yeah, that's a tricky question.
Yeah.
And
fair statement.
Especially because everybody is on this 6-week timeline, it seems, where they're okay, at 6 weeks, I'm going to be cleared to do everything. And I don't know about you, but when I was cleared at 6 weeks to go back and do everything, that was 8.5 years ago. And I mentioned there not being a lot of information about working out while pregnant at that time. But there was even less information about the return to exercise after pregnancy. I ended up finding Emily Wannenberg. She's based in Jacksonville, and she created the 4th trimester fitness method. And I found her, thankfully, and that was where kind of my postpartum journey, both for myself and for working with other women, kind of began.
That's awesome.
And that's where we learned that we can actually start doing things to support ourselves just a day or two past giving birth, trying to re-engage the pelvic floor and reconnect the core system together to start, just getting things, the blood flowing again, and to get yourself just feeling reconnected. You start hearing like 9 months in, 9 months out. You're seeing all the pictures of 9 months in, 9 months out, and everybody says it took 9 months to grow this baby. It's going to take 9 months to get the weight off or to feel like you did pre-baby. But there's plenty of women that felt great 2 or 3 weeks postpartum, and they wanted to start going for their runs, or they want to start working out again. And then you have women on the flip side that it's taking 12 to 18 months to feel like themselves and to feel like they're reconnected again. And I think it's important to know that no matter where you fall on that timeline, it's okay. There's just so much pressure for women to bounce back. And I hate that word, that phrase, because, you look at your friend who had a baby, 2 weeks after you, and they look better than you. And you're like, what happened? Like, what happened to me? Like, why don't I look like that? So, there's so many things that play into it. Genetics is one. And, just breastfeeding for some people makes the weight fall off. Breastfeeding for other people makes you not able to lose any weight. So, I think we just need to remember that we need to support your body, know how to progress yourself, to gain your function back, and to start feeling strong again and supported. And so I know that's like a very vague, generalized answer, but we can't put a timeline on it, because if we do, I feel that puts even more pressure on women who are already feeling, super vulnerable,
Totally.
and, maybe just down about, how the recovery is going.
But I like that you didn't put a timeline on it, because it is a tricky question. And just going back to like, what did you just say, to find the functionality of your body again. Yeah. And I like that you said you don't like bounce back, because the body you have post baby is different from any body you've ever had. So how are you bouncing back? Like, I agree. I have to agree with you on that. Like, your hips are wider most of the time. Like your skin has been stretched, your organs have been moved around. And it's like, there are tons of people, and I know a bunch of them, who are like, yay, 6 months, a year later, they have these beautiful, like, toned physiques. And like I say all the time, like, I'm still 20 pounds heavier than I've ever been in my entire life post baby. And I work out 5 to 7 days a week. I do the yoga, I run, I play tennis, I'm doing the squats and the burpees. And I have, a trainer that I see once a week, and you're just like, and then you're like, well, I do enjoy French fries once in a while and some wine. So there's got to be balance. And I think it's really important that, just to, drive your point home, that we understand that our bodies post baby aren't necessarily meant to be the same as they were before. And that's okay. And I think that we should try to like normalize that. Like, there is no, it's 9 months in, 9 months out. Like that's going to look different for everybody. I think what we should start thinking about is, are you taking care of your body? Are you trying to be physically active? Again, I'm on my soapbox. And, are you trying your best to be healthy within a balanced lifestyle? And if we could have those questions and what's an acceptable time to quote unquote bounce back, well, maybe we would have a lot more moms who felt, capable and empowered, instead of like, they're not doing enough.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's I use that word a lot, empowerment, and that's what we're trying to do at Fit Mamas is empower women with knowledge, so that they know, how to continue to move their body safely, and how to challenge it. We want to continue to challenge your body, and so you can get stronger. That's how we get stronger, is by challenging our body and pushing the boundaries a little bit. And I don't say that in a sense of like, running back and like squatting the weight that you were squatting on the barbell, or doing box jumps and all that. So I think that's the biggest thing, is that I like to make sure that women know that there's a process to getting back to where you want to be. And let's say you were like a marathon runner and you get the all clear at 6 weeks. You're not going to go out the next day, or you shouldn't go out the next day and try to run 10 miles. It'd be like trying to, if you were squatting, 200 pounds on the barbell prior to getting pregnant, you're not going to go and start at 200 pounds. You're going to start light and work yourself back up to that. So, like we mentioned, like not overstressing an already stressed system, like your body goes through a lot no matter what type of birth you have. And no matter how you're feeling too, even after like a vaginal birth, you might be feeling like $1 million at 3 weeks postpartum, but you have to remember that all of those organs and parts of your body, they've all been kind of like displaced, and everything needs its time to come back and settle back into where it's supposed to be. We want to make sure that you're not having any kind of urinary incontinence and pelvic pressure and things like that. And, it's like your mom and your grandma always say like, oh, well, that's just what happens. Now you had a baby. Now you're going to start peeing your pants when you jump on the trampoline. And so just knowing that there's ways to progress yourself back into exercise so that you're not feeling those symptoms.
No, I think that's really important. Do you think, and you've already kind of answered, like, how long to wait, because you're right, it all does vary. But do you think, like, or have you seen like a vaginal delivery versus like a C-section? Like, is there like a noticeable difference in like recovery time from a fitness perspective of when you have seen clients be able to come back to work out into the gym?
And so this is also a little bit of a tricky question. And I'm going to preface it by saying I am a fitness professional, not an OBGYN or a midwife.
Fair.
But so typically, I think this varies by state, but typically in Florida, whether you had, and I call C-sections belly births, I feel it's a more like gentle way of saying it, because no matter how your baby came out of you, we all birthed our babies. So no matter if you had a vaginal or a belly birth, typically in Florida, you'll be released at 6 weeks, sometimes 8, if you had any kind of complications or things like that. But I've had clients, friends, studio members who've had a belly birth that was like an emergency, that they, it was like a real quick, got wheeled back to the OR and just had to get the baby out as fast as possible after they labored for 13 to 20 hours. So they were exhausted. Then they went under a major surgery, and their recovery was brutal. Those same people who went in for a scheduled belly birth with their second birth, they felt amazing a few days after. I mean that in a physical sense of they didn't feel like they had been like run over by a truck, but they still have the incision, of course, and the incision from a belly birth can hinder movement in the early weeks. It can make you feel a little disconnected with your core, not able to engage the core to even like get out of bed easily. But then on the flip side, there are birth traumas that happen with a vaginal birth, so perineal tears, episiotomies, those types of things. And if you have a grade 4 tear, that can feel terrible for several weeks, if not like a couple of months, which is, I'm a huge advocate for all women seeing a pelvic health PT during pregnancy and after their birth, just to make sure that everything is connecting properly and that you are moving the way that you need to be moving to, protect yourself. And it's not just in the gym or in your yoga classes and things like that. It's your basic functional day-to-day movements that we are finding ourselves getting hurt.
Yeah.
So picking up the laundry basket in a weird way without engaging your core, picking up the car seat, the lightest the car seat's ever going to be with a baby in it is the day you leave the hospital. And then every day it gets heavier and heavier. So,
that's so true. Nobody ever says that, but that's just a really good fact.
So, I guess, to answer your question, like there is kind of a general timeline, like 6 to 8 weeks, but there are, plenty of people that have not felt like they can get back to their regularly scheduled workouts for several months after, no matter what type of birth they had. So
I just think it is impeccably important to highlight that we all want an answer, and we all want to be told, like, we want the, when can I want to get back to normal, I want to do this. Yeah. And I just think asking the provocative questions and putting, no, I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but like getting the insight is just saying that you are your own advocate for your body. And if you feel good, 2 to 3 weeks, even after a belly birth, I like that you call that actually, it's really cool. If you feel well enough and capable to try something, obviously probably lighter. Again, I'm not the fitness professional or doctor here, but like to ease your way back into it, then you should try it, but if you don't feel capable, if getting out of the bed is hard or walking across your bedroom is hard, then you're probably not ready at 6 to 8 weeks. And I think that we're trying so hard to, get back to the grind or do it, that like we're not giving ourselves the grace, and we're not allowing our bodies to find that new functionality. Yeah. Especially now that we're caring for a human on top of our own individual human being. Yeah. So, I'm not trying to be provocative, but I guess in a way I kind of am.
So, I teach a 6-week postpartum recovery series, and that is through the 4th trimester fitness method that I mentioned. And it's, approved by doctors and midwives. Everyone who has seen the curriculum loves it. And it's because we start teaching women as early as 10 days postpartum after a vaginal birth. We say 6 weeks for a belly birth, but there are a couple of OBs in the area that will clear at 3 weeks as long as there's no complications, because they see the importance of teaching these women how to correctly support their body. So we lay the foundation. How to use your breath with your pelvic floor and your deep transverse abdominal muscles to help support you throughout movement. If let's say you're having your second baby and it's a belly birth, and the doctor says you can't lift anything heavier than the baby, and you can't drive, and you can't do this. There's all these things you can't do. And, I spoke with my OB about this, and I said, what I'm seeing is, because I see kind of like the real life version of the mom, like the OB sees the mom who's like just getting the advice from the doctor of like what you can and can't do. But then I see what's actually happening when these moms leave the hospital is they've got a 2-year-old at home who weighs 25 to 30 pounds, who doesn't understand that mommy can't pick you up. So what's the mom doing? Picking up the toddler. And I just point blank said, my goal is to make sure that these women are doing this safely so that they don't hurt themselves. And he was totally on board. And so he will clear at 3 weeks for belly birth moms who have no complications, because, the first 2 weeks we lay down the foundation. How do you connect that breath and that deep core system? And then how do we start applying that to basic movements like squats? And when we say squats, I'm like, I can't squat. I haven't been cleared. And like, well, do you sit down at the kitchen table and stand up? Do you sit down to the toilet and stand up? Like all of these things you're doing, picking up toys off the floor, you're squatting several hundred times a day. So we need to teach you how to do that safely, so that you protect your incision, so you protect your pelvic floor. So that's a really nice way. We've got several instructors actually around the country now who teach that series. And it's I took it after both my boys were born. And I was making the trek all the way to Jacksonville. It was like a full hour there and back with a 2-week-old. So I saw the importance, and and I wanted to be that advocate for myself, like you mentioned, and to be proactive in my recovery so that I didn't have issues down the road.
Well, I like that you notice and you are like implementing something like when I had my son, I talk about this in other podcasts, so people, sorry. I had an intervention. He was vacuumed out, but I looked at my doctor in the eye and I said, I'm 1,500 miles away from friends and family. My husband doesn't drive. You're fucking crazy if you think I can have a belly birth, because if I am laid up for 8 weeks, there's no one to look after this child.
Right.
I mean, 5 days after my son was born, my husband was at a business trip in Arizona. There was no other option for me but then to show up. So I think it's great that we have all these recommendations, quote unquote, from our OBGYNs and our doctors. And again, I'm never trying to slander our doctor, 100%. Definitely never trying to do that, although it does sound like that every time I talk about him. But the functionality of day-to-day life and the reality is that many of us I work from home or stay-at-home moms, or we are moms who work in the office and we still have kids at home. Like, the reality is we have a lot of crap to do every day. And yes, we might have a partner who's there to help us, but we still have to pick up that toddler who's 2 years old, even though we're not supposed to. So I love that you are making it accessible to women to say, hey, we understand that you're going to have to do this. Why don't we give you the tools to do it properly so you don't re-injure yourself, so you don't have more complications, so that you and your children and your partner don't suffer. I think that's brilliant. And I think it's so smart because, again, we're all trying to get through the day, and sometimes you only have your two hands. That's incredible. That's I wish I would have had that 4 years ago.
Just to really quick speak on what you said about, we're not talking badly about OBGYNs or midwives. They are amazing at what they do. And I think from the time that I set out to start Fit Mamas, everything that I've implemented over the last, because I started it in July of 2013, right? My oldest was 3 months old. Yeah. So it's just over 8 years. And everything that I've added on and implemented within our community is something that I wish had been available to me. So I'm trying to build this entire support system for moms. And I'm trying to, make sure that we can work with care providers to give women the best outcome. I never will overstep or step out of my scope of practice. But just making sure that we have a team of people that can help women, and it's from care providers, OBGYNs, midwives to fitness professionals, making sure that we can get women back in feeling like themselves. Pelvic health PTs and even mental health therapists are a huge component as well, because postpartum depression is and postpartum anxiety, those are very prevalent.
So real.
Yeah.
Just on that, to go kind of off topic, I've had so many women talk to me about postpartum anxiety. Not even they didn't feel depressed. They didn't that's a big issue, but it seems like just in my little circle of people that I've spoken to, it's almost like that anxiety piece is almost, and I don't have statistics here. Again, I'm just going off of my little microcosm. It's almost more prevalent, but not really discussed as much as all of a sudden everything, walking down the street the other day with my toddler. I'm like, oh my God, a car is going to jump the curb and hit it. This crazy anxiety that happens. I'm not saying it doesn't happen to partners or dads. But the biological birth parent, I feel like in a lot of cases, you just have this thing and you're just holy crap. Why am I so worried about things that never before crossed my mind, So
I totally had that with my first too. I remember I was walking at my parents' house upstairs, and the balcony just looked down at the first floor, and I started having these visions of him flying out of my arms over the balcony, and I'm like, what is happening? And I wasn't telling anybody because definitely nobody was talking about this back then. And
then you feel crazy.
And I felt crazy. And it wasn't until several years later somebody started talking about postpartum anxiety, and I was like, oh, I wonder if that's what I had. And right, so it's just and you know what. Go ahead. You finish. Oh, well, I was just going to say, I was just talking with a client yesterday. And, she told me, like, she's like on the other side of it now, but, I trained her throughout her pregnancy, and now her son's about to be 1. And she was mentioning that, she had postpartum depression, and she'd gotten on some medication, and she was feeling a lot better. And I felt very guilty, because it was hard for me, because I didn't know her prior to pregnancy. I met her while she was pregnant. And so I didn't know her before, like all the hormones and things like that. But I could tell in her postpartum stage that she was possibly struggling, but I was like, well, maybe that's just her personality, because I didn't know her. But I said, what could I have done different? How could I have asked you, how are you doing? And I try to ask moms, how are you doing emotionally? I feel like that's an open-ended question that maybe they'll open up. And I don't want them to open up to me as meaning, like, I'm not obviously a mental health therapist, but I do have people I can say, like, why don't you call this person who is a mental health therapist, who can, it's qualified to talk to you about this and point you in the right direction if you do maybe need some medication, things like that. And she said, Lauren, I don't know that what you could have said or, didn't say would have made a difference, because my own family didn't even ask me, and they know me. Wow. They know me in and out, my parents and my husband and things like that. And so, I think that's a big hurdle we need to get over, is making sure that that women are supported mentally as well, because it's, especially now in the last 2 years, I think it's even more prevalent than it used to be. So
absolutely,
everybody's kind of quarantined off from friends and family and stuff.
Literally siphoned off from people, and we're all at our wits' ends. I would say, and I have 2 things to speak of to just kind of go on that topic. I think that, one, from that client, that was a lesson for you don't know, right? Like, if you don't know somebody, or you know them in a very specific way, like, I practice with tennis coaches all the time, and I'm very bubbly and outgoing, and I'll have a bad day here and there, but, like, they're not going to know if I'm having a bad day. And I think that sometimes, like, that's almost like a lesson and an opportunity for your own, for the future, if you ever come across someone like that in the future. Like, and maybe they'll be fine, but you will ask that open-ended question. So I think that everything's a learning opportunity, and I'm sure you felt a little bit better when you realized her family didn't even know.
I do, in the last class of that 6-week series that I was mentioning, we go over, just kind of like the maintenance plan of how to continue to progress yourself forward and things like that. But I do mention in that class, if you are feeling down, like maybe the baby blues are lasting more than a few weeks, you're just not feeling yourself mentally, just be sure that you reach out to somebody, whether it's your partner or your parents or aunt, uncle, doctor, therapist. Talk to somebody, because, there's no reason for you to suffer for months on end.
Totally.
I know 2 people specifically in town that they went, one of them was 7 months, one of them was 9 months postpartum before they were heard and diagnosed with postpartum depression. It's so sad they had to go that long, feeling that way.
And then they probably think that something's wrong with them, and you're like, no, like this is something you can work through. There's nothing wrong with you. It's just
right.
Hormones are crazy. Let's be real here. The other thing I wanted to say is that that's part of the reason I started this podcast, was because I felt like there was so much I didn't know about motherhood and my options and childbirth and things that should, and I want accessible. Like, I think it's so important to, like, you're building out all these things for Fit Mama, and I'm like, I want everybody to know about all the things I didn't know about, and that if I would have done it this way instead of that way, or I've tried something different. I just think that, like, that knowledge, just like, just learning and being able to connect with people and let them know, like, what's happening that they probably aren't getting from anywhere else. Like, this, you can do all of these things, and it's okay as long as, like, your practitioner is part of your plan, or like whoever your practitioner may be. Yeah. So when it comes to personal training and fitness, how can a professional like you help women and achieve fitness at all these various stages?
So, like we mentioned, no two pregnancies, no two postpartum journeys, no 2 days are ever going to be the same. So having a fitness professional who specializes in this demographic, it's going to be beneficial to you because we know how to change up the workout or the exercise based on where you are today, not where not which week of pregnancy you're in, but where you are today, how you're feeling today, how is your body reacting to these external forces that we're placing on it. And so, we know how to safely program and progress and modify every single workout and exercise that we put you through. And you can come in and say, like, you're having trouble, like, getting in and out of your car. So it's even functional movements that we can help with. Things like that.
Nice.
So, I think kind of before I became certified and trained heavily in this demographic, both like the perinatal women, so pre and postnatal. I was kind of one of those trainers like, oh, I trained myself throughout my pregnancy, so I know how to train people throughout theirs. And then I was like, oh, actually, no, I don't. And that's when I started getting my hands on any kind of literature or any type of trainings and workshops that I could. And I've traveled all the way to Canada for workshops with professionals, and any time I can find to read. People are like, what do you read when you have spare time? I'm like, for fun. I'm like, I guess my textbook.
Get better at my job. Thanks.
Yeah. So I'm very interested in it. So I'm always looking at new material and in questioning some things that I read. Like, does that actually make sense? So.
Oh, I like that. I love all of that.
I'm always learning, and I'll never claim to know everything. And I think that's always good to have a kind of a thirst for more knowledge.
Amen to that. I can totally get behind that. When moms or women clients who get discouraged in their fitness progress, how do you offer tips for them to stay true to their goals? Keep them motivated, I guess, is a better way of putting that.
Yeah. And it's going to be tricky.
The theme of this podcast in particular.
Yeah. I've had those struggles myself. And one thing I always tell myself, and I tell my clients and our members, is one day at a time. And I know that can sound like, oh God, like I roll. But it's true. Like, we all have those days or weeks where life just literally gets in the way, and we put ourselves last most of the time. Some weeks where, I don't know about you, but I eat out way too many times. And even if you try to eat out and eat or something healthy, it's just not as healthy as when you cook it at home. Some weeks we don't get our workouts in and we get a little grumpy. But it's important to just remind yourself that, like, that doesn't mean you failed. Doesn't mean you failed towards working towards your goals. Tomorrow is always a new day to start again and start fresh and do something that's going to help you work towards those goals. So, whether it's like meal prep or getting yourself to the gym, I think one of the things that I used to be this way. It's like, oh, I don't have a full hour to go to the gym, so I'm just going to skip it. So, and so remembering that, like, if you can get 15 minutes in, even if it's something quick like in your driveway or in your living room, that's better than no minutes at all. So it's just, I think that's the ticket, is just remembering that every day is a new day. And just because you had one, and I don't like to say like the word like bad meal or bad day, I think, like you mentioned earlier, like finding that balance and knowing that that one meal or those French fries that you ate, that's not going to derail you from what you're trying to achieve. It's like an 80-20 rule. 80% of the time you are treating your body very well and like honoring it and being good to it. And 20% of the time we want to like let loose and have fun. And, I've personally been on all of the different places that were, completely like restricting myself from all the things that I love. And then all of a sudden one day you just like binge on all of it. And then, you know, like on the other spectrum, like just binging too many days in a row, or, you know, but kind of finding where, you know, you work out or you eat that healthy meal and you say like, that made me feel really good, so I'm going to do that again because I like how that made me feel. Totally. Or, you know, you eat like all the Oreos, you're like, oh, I feel like crap now, I'm not going to do that again. You know,
I can't buy processed, like if I like Cheez-Its, there's a box in my cupboard and it's like,
I can't buy Cheez-Its.
I eat the whole
must
thing.
put something in those.
I agree with you. You can't just have one or five. It's like not all or literally the box. Like, here's your caloric intake for the day.
What did you put in this? Because I can't take my hand out of the box.
Oh no, it's like, but that and like French fries. Like you just can't put them in front of me, or I'm just going to be like. And fruit snacks. I can't buy fruit snacks. I don't buy fruit snacks. My poor kid is probably deprived, but it's more for my benefit than for him. Like, I'm like, ugh. I will eat all of those, child. Trust me. Yeah. Is there anything else you'd like to share that you don't think we covered?
You know, just back to that last question too, you know, feeling discouraged about your progress or whatnot. You know, I tell my, a part of my postpartum recovery journey after my second was born a lot, just because I feel like it kind of resonates with a lot of women. I had the birth that I wanted with my second. I went into labor on my own, was not induced, and he was born sunny side up. So I had some tearing. I had a grade 2 tear, and it goes 1 through 4. And I was like, and I had a friend who had like a grade 3 or 4 who was walking around quite well. And I was like, how is she walking around so well? And she has a higher grade than me. And I mean, I'm talking like I was like holding my hand down there, like to walk from the couch to the bathroom, because I felt like everything was just going to like fall out of me. And this was, you know, one of the previous questions of, you know, can it help you with your labor, delivery, your postpartum journey, exercise. And so again, I had done everything the way it's supposed to be done, and he just kind of like turned during labor to be sunny side up. And it took several weeks to even feel like I could walk, you know, a 1/10 of a mile down the street. I mean, that was taking me like 20 minutes to walk that distance. And, you know, went back to work at 6 weeks. I had started seeing a pelvic health PT at 3 or 4 weeks postpartum, because I could feel, I was in that postpartum recovery class, and I could just feel like the recruitment was not happening with my pelvic floor like it should be at that point in time. And I literally couldn't figure out what was wrong. So I was also having like this weird tailbone pain. I was having like fecal urgency, where I was feeling like I had to like race to the bathroom, and I would sit down and like nothing would happen. I'm like, what is happening to me? So I ended up going to see the pelvic health PT. She fixed the tailbone issue in one session, and we figured out the reason why I was not able to recruit those pelvic floor muscles is because I had some nerve damage on one side. So we started working on that nerve damage. But I was feeling, sorry, this is I'm getting long-winded here.
This is fascinating. No, I think this is great.
I was just kind of feeling like, you know, I was 6 weeks postpartum. I went back to work, and everybody knows I just had this baby, and they're kind of watching. Well, they probably weren't. It was probably all in my head. But I felt like everybody's watching me. I was like, okay, what's she going to do to like get back, bounce back and get her body back? And I was squatting literally like a quarter of the way down. And I was doing that because that's where I felt like I could control my core system and my pelvic floor. That's where I could get that recruitment to happen. And so I'm like, they're all probably thinking like, why is she squatting like 6 inches down and up? But I was feeling really discouraged at one point in this whole postpartum recovery process, because I had done everything right. And I had been recruiting my pelvic floor and my core during exercises and things like that. And that's when I mentioned, like, sometimes things just happen that are not totally in your control. And so I just had to remind myself that, like, all these little baby steps that I was taking was going to help me to come back even stronger than I was before. So although it didn't happen on my timeline that I had set for myself, it ended up happening. And now I can use that story to help others to understand that, like, it might not happen as quickly as you want it to, but, together we can get you back and stronger than before.
Oh, I love that. And I think that's a good share. I think that's something that, like, we all have our own timelines, how we think we want something to go. Sometimes it's just not in the cards, and that's like, c'est la vie, that's life. Like, you have to, again, let's go back to that grace factor. Yeah. Real quick, I think we can squeeze in one more question. Sure. And this is just off the cuff. How do you stay true to yourself, be it fitness and motherhood? What keeps you grounded and centered, going into every day? How do you make it happen?
Oh, that's a hard question.
Fair.
I'm a human like everyone else, and I have the same struggles that every other mom has, and being a fitness professional, I think it makes things a little bit more tricky, because it's like, okay, this is my job. I have to be in shape. I have to take care of my body and things like that. So I try to stay true to the advice that I give the moms, of, one day at a time, and let's just do something today that's going to help me be a healthier version of myself. And, some days it doesn't happen. And, I try the next day. I'm like, okay, I'm going to, it happened this week. 'Cause, like, the holidays, it's just crazy, and food's everywhere, and overindulge in all the things. And it's like, so okay, guilty of that. This week, I'm just going to move my body. I'm going to find at least 30 minutes a day to do this. And, the other day I was outside in the driveway playing basketball with my boys. And that's how I moved my body that day. So, just finding ways to make it happen, even if it's not a structured workout inside the gym.
I like that, though. That's so real too. Like, some days you just can't.
Yeah.
you just got to do what you can with what you got.
And some days, like, you literally just need to rest, and your body's telling you need to take a rest day, and just, feed your body with good food and hydrate, and, get some good sleep, which
chill.
Is easy. Yeah.
Chill.
So
that's a really good point. So Lauren, tell everybody where they can find you and Fit Mama Tribe.
So the website is fitmamastribe.com, and Mama is MAMAS. On Instagram, it's Fit Mama's Tribe, and as well as on Facebook. We do have Pinterest as well, but that's one of my 22 goals, is to be better at Pinterest.
You can only do so much. Like, I mean, you're one woman running a business with a family. Like, there's only so many social things you can keep up with. At least that's what I tell myself. Like, whatever.
Everybody's like, you should get on TikTok and on LinkedIn, and I'm like, I just can't right now.
One thing at a time. Sometimes it's like, what do they even tell you? Like, marketing experts will even tell you, stick with like one or two that you're really good at, and just go from there. Anyway, that's a different topic for a different day. But this is Lauren, Fit Mama's Tribe in St. Augustine. Thank you so much for sharing your fitness advice, your tips, your insight for prenatal to postpartum bodies. It's just so... And just to recap, like, it's all tricky, people. Like, you got to talk to your practitioners. You got to ask questions. You got to be honest with yourself and give yourself grace. But we're really grateful for your time and your insight and your expertise. And I'm so glad you're close to me, because I might have to come down and see you.
I wish you would. Thank you so much for inviting me on today. This is great.
Oh, this is awesome. And to anybody out there listening, give yourself some grace and have fun learning all the things you didn't know you needed to know.